Blog Talk Radio. Today is Wednesday, December 13th, 2017, and this is Foxology. I am Silver Ray Fox, your host. Happy Wednesday to you, or whatever day you are listening to the podcast. I wish you a happy day, of course. But thank you for taking time to check out the show. I'm glad you did come by. I'm always trying to get something out to you guys that's going to be informative and helpful, educational, and all of that. And I've got some great info for you today as well. It's no different. And that being said, it certainly is necessary to talk about some of the current topics, events regarding sexual assault and sexual assault allegations and issues of domestic violence, with this being that time of year when incidences escalate. We'll talk about those things as well as other issues with my guest, who is a leading expert on these topics. I'm so happy to have him here. I want to tell you a little bit about him, though, before we get the conversation going. His name is Ervin. He's a consultant specializing in working with organizations and communities to promote healthy masculinities, equity, diversity, justice, and violence prevention. He is a longtime activist and community organizer focusing on anti-racism and gender justice. Among his organizing efforts, he is co-founder of the D.C. Men Against Rape, now known as Men Can Stop Rape Incorporated, Men's Work, Eliminating Violence Against Women Incorporated, the Own It Initiative, and that's a project of the Center for Women and Families, the Ohio Men's Action Network, White Folks Against Racism, among others. He serves on several national and transnational boards. He is the secretary of the board of the National Center on Sexual and Domestic Violence, is how I came to meet him, actually. He serves as co-chair of Male Engagement of World Without Exploitation. It's an international coalition to combat human trafficking and exploitation. And he is also co-founder of the North American Men Engage Network, a U.S. and Canada network of efforts to engage and organize men to promote gender equality and gender justice, where he currently serves on the steering committee, and he currently serves on the steering committee and as newsletter editor. He's currently working with Nebraska to create statewide supports for engaging men to help in gender-based violence, with Metro Louisville to help promote structures to support engaged fathering, the Jefferson County school system to create an environment supporting healthy masculinity, among others. He's traveled extensively throughout the U.S. and internationally. He's a sought-after trainer and speaker. He was a part of the coalition that crafted and worked to pass the original Violence Against Women Act, focusing on the safe campuses and civil rights sections of that law. He's also written extensively. In 1993, he wrote the first book in the United States by a man for men about stopping rape. It's titled Stopping Rape, A Challenge for Men, and it's published by New Society. A couple weeks ago, he was selected as the liaison for Naaman to the board of directors of the Global Men Engage Alliance. I think I didn't say that right, but we'll talk about it anyway. I want to welcome to the Foxology platform today my very special guest, Russ Funk. Thank you, sir, for joining me today.
Well, thank you. I so appreciate the invitation to be a part of this conversation.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm sorry I stumbled over some things. I actually had a cough lozenge in my mouth that I had to get rid of so I could sound at least a little bit a little smoother. I didn't even think about it when I started reading, but that was giving me some tongue twisters there. So
yes,
I
indeed.
apologize. Thank you once again, though, for joining me today. Happy to have you with me. And you're a busy man, I know, with all that I have just said. I can tell that you have to squeeze in situations like this. So I do, again, appreciate you for doing that. You know, I want to start with this. Your bio says a lot about your significance and value in all these areas. You have been really at work. But I want you to tell us in your own words what it is you're doing from day to day. Break it down for us in some chunks, bite-sized chunks that we can see. We have an overview, but tell us what you're doing from day to day.
Well, thank you again for the invitation, and good afternoon, at least from Kentucky. Good afternoon to the listeners on right now. On a daily basis, most of what I do is either coordinate and consult with organizations around the country, mostly on the community level, who are interested in working to empower men to be part of the solution of rape and domestic violence. And then locally here in Kentucky, both in Louisville and in a couple of other communities around the state, working in those same venues. I do some pieces, as you mentioned on my bio, I do some pieces of some other kinds of work, promoting fatherhood, addressing equity and diversity more broadly. But the core of my work continues to be helping to empower men to step up to their place and to our place in ending domestic and sexual violence. What the data tells us, and this is global data, is that there's really very little difference between men and women in terms of believing that domestic and sexual violence are wrong and believing that those forms of violence and abuse have no place in our communities. Where there is significant difference is the level of activism and engaged involvement, where we see tremendous gender differences. Even most recently with the current #MeToo movement and the efforts of women to challenge sexual harassment, men, by and large, have mostly been keeping their head down, it seems to me. I should say our heads down.
Mm-hmm.
We have not, even though men are as opposed to the sexual harassment kinds of claims and accusations that women have made against other men, we're not visible to any significant degree. And what we're starting to learn with some real evidence is that when men are in the game, if you will, to the degree that women are in the game, when men are actively involved, we start to see a difference in the rates of domestic and sexual violence. I'm not sure if I actually answered your question about what I'm doing on a daily.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I'm involved
in. Well, it's important work, and I know that your demand has had to increase in recent times. Is there something in particular that inspired you to take on this field of work?
Actually, yes. When I was in undergraduate school back in the early 80s in South Texas, I was a social work student, social work major. And back in that time, in at least in my program, the social work program, it was very clearly suggested that social work is a practice degree, not a theoretical degree. So in the introductory to social work class, we were expected to go find some place to practice what we were learning. And by happenstance, happened to stumble into an opportunity to volunteer at the local rape crisis and domestic violence agency. And as my awareness about these issues was raised through working at the Hays County Women's Center, I was also living in an all-men's dorm on campus. And I was 18 to 19 at this point. And what I started to notice was the way that the women that I was working with at the center described how their men talked to them was scarily similar to the way that I was with my guy friends on the dorm talking about the women that we were interested in and dating. And when I started to notice that the similarities between those men who, what I thought, quote unquote, were those men who perpetrated the violence and us men who were the good men, when that distinction started to dissolve, was when I started to realize that maybe my best work was with the men like me, not with the women who were being hurt. And that was what started the process of my becoming more actively involved in working so aggressively to involve men in this work.
They would call that getting woke, huh, Russ?
Yes.
It really.
Absolutely.
Wow, that's really awesome. That's awesome. Well, you know what I'd also like to know from you, and you kind of explained it a question ago, but I'd like for you to give us your perspective on the current media atmosphere regarding the sexual harassment and assault. And I mean, an analyzation, if you will, when you look at it from your professional perspective. There's so many dynamics involved now. I mean, it has just hit everywhere. Just give us your perspective when you look at it as a professional, as someone who's stepping up to the calling in your life, in your work. What do you see? We see like, wow, people who are, we're on the sidelines. We're going, wow, every day at something new that's popping up, and maybe you're doing that too. I don't know, but give us your perspective.
Well, yes, I do have that wow every day kind of experience, both with the national news and in Kentucky. Just 2 or 3 weeks ago, we had one of our city council members voted out by the city council. By all attempts, he was fired by the city council for a pattern of sexual harassment in our city council. And just yesterday, we had a state representative accused of sexual assault against a teenager. So, yes, on the national level and in my own state and town, it continues to be a daily kind of wow. Here comes another one. A couple of things that I notice. One is how. One of the things that I don't think is being paid attention to is that the vast majority of the men who are being accused are white, almost exclusively. They're white men who are being accused of these kinds of harassment. And I don't know that white men are necessarily more prone to harass than black or brown men are, but it does suggest to me another expression, another way that racism manifests itself in terms of locking black and brown men out of the positions of power that the white men who are being accused are being accused of. Black men just, we don't have a black Matt Lauer. We don't have a black or brown man who is the level of authority or power that Harvey Weinstein had. And to me, part of what that manifests as a white man, it manifests this intersection between how racism and sexism work together to allow environments of sexual harassment to become rampant. The other thing I noticed that I find very worrisome. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, what about Bill Cosby and Representative Conyers? I mean, those are black men, very high-profile black men. There are a lot of them that are being called out right now. Maybe you missed that. Well, you couldn't miss Bill Cosby.
No, certainly not, or Representative Conyers. But as you stated, in terms of the daily grind, the daily or sometimes multiple times a day, those are the two that we've heard of. And there are a lot more prominent black men out there that aren't being accused. And so, I think there's a way that racism and sexism are intersecting that in this moment, and we're paying more attention to the sexist dynamics, not attending to so much to the racist dynamics that are at play. The other dynamic.
I forgot to mention Clarence Thomas too. That's an old story, but it's the same thing going on.
Yes.
So I just wanted to make sure I interjected that we've all learned that it is not based on any level of income or status or anything. It's a lot of men in all kinds of places in life right now that are being tapped, being finger pointed, being brought out. Whatever the best terminology is, they're they're being spotlighted now. So I just wanted to make sure I interjected that for anybody who's listening.
I appreciate that point. The other dynamic that I find very worrisome at the moment is this tendency to otherize and awfulize those men who are being accused, and I don't think that's helpful. I don't know that it's helpful for us to point out how awful those men are. I heard somebody say last week that they thought Matt Lauer was a good man, and I don't know that it's helpful to Matt Lauer, and I don't know that it's helpful for us to flip our thinking that these are either good men and therefore not capable of doing things like this, or they're bad men and we need to reject them whole cloth. I think we need a more nuanced analysis about what's going on and how good men do bad things, and they need to be held accountable for doing bad things. They need to be fully held accountable, but they're not awful human beings for the most part. And that othering dynamic.
I want to say this about that.
Mm-hmm.
Let me say something about that, too, because to a slight degree, I do get it, what you're saying. If you're a woman, though, a female, you're a little girl, we're going to call that awful because so much of it really is. And when we look at some of the greater context, the damage, the lifelong scars, the mental health issues, the all kinds of problems that a certain degree of sexual assault can cause, categorically, that probably saying awful is a mild word. I know what you're saying in the sense that let's give ourselves an opportunity to look at the dysfunctionality a different way. I know what you're saying, and I think that's probably going to happen with the men who are serious offenders in situations like this. But I'm very careful to make sure that there's no disrespect or dishonor toward mothers who are dealing with daughters who have been raped or children who have been assaulted and various other things, that we look at those men and we do think they're bad people. We think they're awful for molesting an 8-month-old baby, or some of the other things that occur that we see also from day to day that are just unbelievable stories when it comes to violating girls, babies, women. So I appreciate what you're saying, and I didn't say that for rebuttal. I just was saying that because I wanted you to have some additional insight to what our hearts may feel, and I'm sure I'm speaking for a great majority of women when I say what I've just said, that everybody across the board needs help in these situations, the men, the women, everybody that's involved. But I just wanted to make sure I did say that too in regard to what you had just said.
Well, thank you for saying that and holding me to account in terms of the way that I may have or have inadvertently disrespected survivors' experiences or their realities. And if I did in any way, I apologize. And again, thank you for calling me in to the way that I may have done that by suggesting that the men weren't awful. And I completely agree with you that the perspective of the women, children, and men who experience this assault has got to be front and center in framing how we look at these issues. And until very recently, they haven't been. Another kind of nod to the #MeToo movement for forcing us to recenter the conversation around the experiences of the people who are experiencing this stuff. So again, I want to thank you for holding me to account for what I'm saying and ensuring that in this conversation we continue to hold the experience of the folks who are harmed center.
Yes, indeed. And again, it wasn't meant for rebuttal or argument. We're all learning more as
right.
the days go by. And those of us who, are wanting to advocate on behalf of victims and perpetrators and whoever else is involved. We need to have greater insight. It's critical. Let's move on. Let me ask you another thing about your work, because you do a lot of speaking, you do a lot of training. Now, here's something that's kind of confusing, and you can probably give really good insight. Most workplaces now, I think it's the law that they're to provide sexual harassment training. Is that correct? It's the law now, isn't it?
I'm not entirely clear about what businesses are covered by that, but yes, it is very routine, at the least, very routine.
Okay,
that
routine
businesses...
is, yeah. Okay, well, that's a good word. Now, here's my question. What are men saying about this? Were they just not taking it seriously? Because it's the training is given when you start working, and routinely they may offer it again, and probably a lot right now. So what do you think? Are people just sitting through the training and just like, oh, okay, got that done, I answered the questions right, and I'm done. So back to me being me. What are men saying to you about that? I mean, because it's pretty clear. It says pretty clearly that it's going to be the woman's perspective about what you said or you did if it's going to be categorically sexual harassment. It's going to be based on how you made them feel, think about what you did or said, not what you thought you meant or didn't mean by it. So what's going on with the training? What have they been saying to you about it?
Well, I think part of what's going on, I don't have a lot of men, talking to me about their experiences of sexual harassment training, but I think part of what's going on is frankly, we're relying too much on training and too little on organizational culture and organizational norms. Mm-hmm. Training only goes so far. I've heard the analogy said that training is like planting seeds. Well, I'm a gardener, and what I know about planting seeds is that if I want to plant seeds, the first thing I got to do is work the soil to make sure that these seeds have a chance of growing. And then once planted, I got to continue to do some work if I want to have any chance of picking some corn at the end of the season. We treat training like throwing seeds into the wind is actually effective in cultivating corn 9 months later. Training isn't going to change an environment in which harassment is prevalent or tolerated. Training isn't going to impact on men who have an environment amongst their colleagues or their peers in the work environment where they tell jokes or make comments that lead one man amongst that group to go 2 or 3 or 18 steps too far. That's a different level of work. And again, the intention is good, but we have to do significantly more than just an annual training that's 90 minutes long if we hope to get on the other side and start reducing the incidence of sexual harassment.
Well, you just answered what my next question was. I was going to ask you, do you think that all that's happened is going to impact the overall workplace and relationships? And basically you're saying no. So what's going to happen? Don't you feel that this whole thing that's going on can impact societal culture, workplace culture, personal values regarding this?
Absolutely. Yes, I do. I'm very hopeful at the moment. I think what's going to change things is so a part of what I do is help men notice that amongst my peers or amongst my colleagues or in any kind of setting where I'm hanging out with the guys, it's not at all uncommon for me to hear men say something about women or about sex or about men's relationship to women that makes me cringe and makes me kind of shudder and like, that ain't okay to say that. But in rare circumstances do men feel empowered to hold other men accountable, just like you did 10 minutes ago with me. And yet men feel and they hear these things and kind of experience the same kind of, that's really not okay what he said. And so they say that in their head, but they won't say that to the man. And I think what's going to be much more effective is if we get men who are willing to say to each other, dude, it's really not okay to say that right now. Or, hey, we're having drinks right now. We're enjoying our time together. But your job right now is to hang out and have a good time. It's not to harass the waitress. If we as men held each other to account in the same kind of gentle, mindful, but firm way that you did to me 15 minutes ago, we would have a very different kind of culture. We'd be having a very different kind of conversation around preventing sexual harassment.
Well, I sure hope that men will get it, what you just said, because it very much has impacted so many lives, and it all comes back for the most part. Of course, women do the same thing, but right now it's the major aspect of this is sitting in the laps of men. And I think that if they begin to take responsibility for not saying the wrong thing, approaching women with a greater degree of regard and respect, getting help where there's needed when you have perverse sexual needs and desires, that whole gamut of that, I think we may begin to see something a lot different. We have just a couple of minutes left, Russ. What would be your major word to men and women right now as a beginning step for any of us?
Well, I have to make a couple of plugs. I think reaching out to the National Center on Domestic and Sexual Violence, ncdsv.org, and finding out some resources there, particularly for those who are wanting to figure out how do you best support friends or colleagues who are being harassed or have been assaulted. And for any of your listeners who might be interested, the North American Men Engaged Network is the network in the United States and Canada that is working to connect and organize men in this regard. There are other organizations that are doing work, but we're the network. And you can find out more about NAMEN, the North American Men Engaged Network, at www.namen.menengage.org. I know that's a very long address, but that's the best we got. And I just want to thank you again for inviting me to be on the show.
Well, I appreciate you. I do want to talk to you again in a few weeks so we can stay updated on this particular issue and see what more is going on, and if there are any things that are being put in place, perhaps other options nationally to help people. The great news about this conversation is that there is help for every component of this, the sexual violence, the domestic violence, the sexual assault, sexual harassment. There are people who you can reach out to. That's the important thing. And so I would like everybody to know that please be encouraged to do that in the event that any of this is impacting you up close and personal. Russ, thank you so much for sharing yourself with us today and providing that information and letting us know all the various organizations that you're a part of where people can also reach out for help. I appreciate you, sir, and please give me a call back after the show if you would not mind. I need to talk to you about some other things.
All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time very much.
No, you as well, as I said. And I want to thank all of you for taking the time to join in today. And conversations like this could go on and on. I feel like there's so much more that could be discussed regarding this, but I do hope that you got some nuggets, some insights, some information that could be helpful to you or anyone else you may need to share it with. We really are all in this together. We are one big society and world and connected in so many ways, and we've got to do all that we can to help one another to get stronger and get better and help the world be an overall better place. Thank you again, and I'll look forward to chatting with you on my next show. In the meantime, until the next time, be good, be blessed, be awesome.